Tonight, once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Bryan Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Phil J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to DT. I know it's been a long week. I haven't done much all week. It's been a little bit longer for me. I had some updates with my injury. No longer in the wound vac, but that's only temporarily. I go back into the wound vac as of Tuesday, I believe, when I go back in there. So it was a good break. It's been a good break without having the tube and the whole thing on my injury and just constantly just aggravating the injury. So it's been a good couple of days without it, but I'm going to have to go back on it. It is still healing. I am getting better. Right now I got an ice pack on my hand and a my arm in a sling and a pillow on my knee here. And so I'm comfortable. I'll be here for as long as I can. But welcome everybody. I just want to say hi and thank you guys. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like, ring that notification bell. That way we can you get notified of every time we do go live, those type of things. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Well, actually, I got somebody sending me something real quick. I want to make sure. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nina. I'm going to see if I can get that on here. Cool. Perfect. All right. Well, there was a, so I was on the YouTubes earlier, right? And I was looking through, just scrolling through some things. Me and the family, we went down to my hometown. So we had a little bit of a drive and given my arm situation, my wife was driving, and I'll be honest with you, my wife drives probably about 85% of the time. But especially given the arm situation and the medication, my wife's driving. So I was just kind of scrolling through, and I noticed that on Jeff H's page that he posted up a picture of a possible Elantra. I'm not going to say it's an Elantra. You can't, or let me rephrase this. I can't tell if it's an Elantra or not. And just because I can't tell if it's an Elantra or not doesn't mean that somebody else who's trained and has the expertise in the field couldn't either. There's a difference, right? I mean, I'm not a surgeon, so there's some things I couldn't do either. I can't perform open heart surgery, but there are some people who have that expertise that can. And so when it comes to these photos that we're going to be looking at and those type of things, just kind of keep that in mind as well, that when we're looking at the footage there, just because you or I can't tell what it is doesn't mean that an expert whose job is solely to detect what type of vehicle this is can't, right? And so let's see. All right, so everybody remember this footage here, right? This was a picture that was populated back when the search was going on, when they were looking for a white Elantra. Bryan Kohberger had not yet been arrested. It'd been presented that a white Elantra was I think it was a white Elantra during a specific time frame, and they were asking the public, they being law enforcement, was asking the public if the public could help them out by searching their security footage and things of that nature. A security or a gas station clerk, I apologize, went through their security tapes, and after a few nights found what looked like a white Elantra driving around during that specific time frame that law enforcement was looking for this vehicle. And this is the image here. I think everybody can remember the image. And, this was an image of a picture of a picture. We can tell that because we can see the iPhone reflection off of the screen. And so with the person's finger. So this was a picture of a picture. And there's been a lot of, not controversy, but a lot of talk whether or not which direction this vehicle was going, what time frame it was at, yada yada yada. And I think we finally got an explanation. Now, again, I was on the YouTube searching the community, or not the community post, but I was just searching, and Jeff H's community post tab came up. It had an interesting picture. It had this picture here, and he was referencing this picture with this one here, and trying to determine if they are in fact one in the same, right? Now let's go back to the this is part of the thumbnail, and what you see in this image here, for those that are just listening in or tuning in on the audio only side, which, guys, if you wanted to just tune in on audio only, just remember we're on Apple, we're on anywhere you can find your podcast. I mean, if you go and tell Siri or Alexa or Google to play the Drunk Turkey Show, it'll end up playing it. And so if you're listening to this there and you're not actually able to view it, recommend checking this out on YouTube, also on Spotify. You'll be able to see the video there. But here is what looks like, and it's not 3 vehicles. I know there might be some folks out there that might think that there's 3 vehicles back to back to back, that one of them is Kohberger and I don't know, a D or something, the guy who was with the whole drug thing. Well, anyways, it's the same vehicle. Why it's 3 vehicles or why it looks this way, I'm not sure if somebody photoshopped it this way or put them together off of a couple of different images, or if it took this image this way. I will say that I think that they were aligned this way, because you can see kind of like a straight line right here in the back of this center. I'm gonna call it an Elantra, even though I can't tell if it's an Elantra or not, but I'm going to call it an Elantra. On the back of this Elantra here, you can see this like vertical black line here. So I'm assuming that they just kind of, whoever took this picture, cut it up. You have other pictures of the same vehicle, one up here in the top right corner as well. And this is going to be a different angle of this vehicle. And then you have a different angle up here in the top left corner of the vehicle actually leaving. Now, this image here, I have seen before. I have not seen the other images. I believe it was Gray Hughes. So I'm going to give Gray his flowers. Gray Hughes is the person who had brought these up. I believe it was last night on his live channel. Jeff H grabbed a couple of pictures of it, put it up on his YouTube channel. That's where I found it. And here we are today. So yes, rest in peace, Bryan Kohberger, 100%. But yeah, no, that's not who it is or anything like that. This is, it's one vehicle. There's 5 Elantras. Like I said, I'm gonna come Elantras again. You have 1 up here, top left, 3 in the center, and then 1 in the top right. So first thing that I wanted to do is just kind of verify that this image is of the same place. And so let's see. This is of the gas station. This is the, so what we're pulling up now is going to be our maps. We're going to look at the gas station itself. 3:45 a.m. and this is the house that it's passing in front of. You can see the shutters. Here is the vacuums for, cleaning the vehicles after they get out of the car wash. And lo and behold, right up here that I'm circling in the top right corner is going to be your camera. That's going to be facing this direction. And so Bryan Kohberger, or allegedly Bryan Kohberger, is going to be traveling eastbound on this street here. Now, this is at 3:45 a.m. and there's going to be some questions about this, right? Because at 3:42, about 3 minutes earlier, the white Elantra suspect vehicle had just left this area at 3:45 or 3:42. And so there's a 3-minute time frame for this vehicle to have gotten from here, from the victim's home area, to the gas station area, but traveling in the opposite direction, right? So it's traveling towards the home. And I think there's going to be some, I think the defense is going to try to argue that this is 2 different vehicles, that the vehicle that is traveling at 3:45 on this road here and the vehicle that had just left are going to be 2 vehicles. if you put it in Google Maps or whatever, that you can't get there and travel in that direction, facing that direction in time. However, I measured it out. It's not that far. I mean, if you go from right here, the victim's residence, you come all the way around, you're at about 1.66 miles. All right. And what that is leaving the residence of the victim's home, coming through and around, getting on the highway, then circling back around. So that way you're traveling in front of that light there. I mean, not that light, of that camera. And you're looking at 1.66 miles distance for that to have happened. So, I mean, I did the math. It takes about, you would have to, in order to do that in 3 minutes, it'd take you'd have to travel at 32 miles an hour, which is very, very plausible. You know what I mean? It's very plausible there. Let's see. Matt MLO says defense doesn't need to argue the vehicles. Their unknown DNA is enough to reasonable doubt. Not really, man. I mean, you have to understand, just because there's DNA in a house where 150 people were there the night before isn't going to all of a sudden say, hey, this guy didn't do it. You know, if there was blood, as they say, there's blood on a handrail, which is different than a bloody handprint. I've been hearing some people say, oh, there's a bloody handprint. No, there's not a bloody handprint. There is a speck of blood on a handrail. Now, how long has that speck of blood been there? Now, if the defense is going to try to argue that came from a perpetrator, right? Well, where did the perpetrator get hurt at? Because there's no other DNA around the victims that would have matched the DNA that's on the handrail. Well, there is no other DNA. That's the only place that unknown DNA came from. There's one on a handrail and there's one outside in a glove, right? And so if that would have occurred during the altercation, then you might have something there. But you don't. You have blood on a handrail where there's 150 people there. God knows how many, just the night before. Anybody can have a bloody nose. Anybody can have a paper cut on their finger and not clean it right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these are college kids. I mean, some of them are athletes. Sometimes things happen where there's bumps, bruises, and things of that nature that occur. Now, the problem when it comes to Bryan Kohberger is people are going to say, well, there's no, that's not blood. But the thing is that blood was located in a handrail. We don't even know what floor that blood was located on which staircase. Was it on the first floor staircase going up to the top? There's a lot of questions that come into play with that speck of blood that's on the handrail. And again, it's on a handrail. It's on a common area. It's not on a knife sheath that was brought in by the killer that we know that the killer brought in. Right. So, just because there's blood there, I mean, to me, I think, like I said, if there was blood wherever, because they would have had to have gotten cut somewhere, right? The person would have had to have gotten cut. They would have had to have gotten assaulted during the process of the crime. I mean, where's the blood on the bodies? Where's the defensive ones? Where's those things? There isn't any. There isn't any. There isn't Bryan Kohberger's either. And that tells you one thing, right? That whoever committed this crime went a lot. They went to a very, very far way out of their way to make sure that they didn't leave DNA behind, whether that's with the kill kit and a bunch of other things. Because at the end of the day, this crime happened. It wasn't a dream like the defense wants you to believe. The defense is saying that, oh, Dylan Mortenson dreamed this entire thing. She doesn't know what was real, what was fake. Well, dude, there was 4 people who lost their lives in that house, so it wasn't a dream. Right. So just because there's like a speck of blood somewhere else in that house, or DNA that they can't discover of somebody else somewhere in that house, doesn't mean much. Now, if it was on the murder weapon, if it was on the body, if it was under the fingernails of a victim, if it was on something that the murderer brought into the house, then I think you might have a point. But with what you just said right there with, oh man, 150 people there, come on now, man. Because at the end of the day, I mean, there's DNA and a bunch of other stuff everywhere, right? Like, nobody would be convicted of anything because there's some sort of unknown DNA somewhere in a house somewhere, You know what I'm saying? How's it connected? Okay, so you have blood somewhere in the house. It had to have come from somewhere. It didn't just all of a sudden while the guy or the perpetrator was running up or down the staircase that their skin tore in the in the middle of the air, and it bled just right there. Like, come on now. Let's use some common sense there. Let's see. And I'm surprised that that's all that's there. It's just that one speck of blood that's unknown. I mean, there's probably a bunch of stuff that's there that is unknown from unknown DNA sources. There was 150 people there the night before, and they didn't clean up very well because you could see the pictures of all the beer bottles and beer pong table and all the food and reminiscences and all that other stuff. There's evidence of all that there. Okay. So we have to think, all right, so what's most important then? What do we know that wasn't there the night before when there was 150 people there? The knife sheath. That wasn't there that night. That was brought in by the killer. And the one thing that a lot of people like to say, oh, yeah, you know what? It had brass on it or whatever the case may have been, right? It was a brass button, so it degraded the DNA quicker. Well, that only means that Bryan Kohberger had to come in contact with that sooner than, fairly soon versus it being something that was around and about the day before, the week before, whatever the case may have been. You must have been in contact with that sheath or that button snap fairly recent to have had it still be able to be found on that button snap that's brass. So take it for what it is. But at the end of the day, unless there's something else that shows, another unknown actually there at the crime scene where the bodies are or on the murder something, right? There's something there. Blood on a handrail in a house that had 150 people the night before that hadn't been cleaned. Come on now. Come on. Let's see. And why does it go into members only? It's because if it goes there, it's because I want it to go there. If you have a problem with it, then by all means. All right, so let's go back to this. So 3 minutes, 32 miles an hour to get back and forth there. 100% feasible. Let's see, give me 1 second. I want to check something. Okay. All right. And so Jeff, he put this up together here. He put this on top of the other vehicles here. And as you can see, this white vehicle here, I mean, it looks spot on with this one right here in the middle. Pretty close. If not this one here at the end, because you can see the red light at the, at the tail end of this tail light here. Maybe not. Maybe it is the one over here. Well, anywho, either way, you can see well past. You don't see another white Elantra there. And so this other image here is a compository of the vehicles on top of each other. So you can see how it's moving. I saw them, Nina. I saw them. I'm going to have to try to get them over. I got to save them and then forward them over. And so it just might take me a minute. And then this is the vehicle leaving, going away. Oh, it kind of looked like there's a little bit of a shine down here, like a reflector underneath that tail light. Let me see if I can zoom. I want to zoom in more than this. This is the max I can zoom in on this image. Let me see if I can get it there real quick. Let's see. I want to see if I can. I'm going to try to zoom in on this picture real quick. Take a screenshot of it and then send that in. I just want to make sure that I'm covering my bases here. Okay, let me. All right, just give me one moment while I do this, guys. I apologize for the inconvenience. And see, this is why, like with Nina, I have to do this basically with all those to get the same thing, to get that comparison, which it's not going to be too much of a big deal. I'm hoping I can do it. But let me get this over here first. Okay. You see how you can see the lights up here. Then there's like a faint reflector down at the bottom underneath the light. Y'all see that? Doesn't the 2015 Elantra have a reflector at the bottom that the 2013, 2011 doesn't? Interesting stuff. No, there's no spoiler back there. Let me see if I can save this stuff over here that Nina had sent me real quick. Okay. Yeah, because I can see the a little bit of a separation of the but I don't know if a 2012 also had that reflector underneath, because it definitely looks like there's some sort of reflector underneath there, and it doesn't appear so. I think it depends on the model. I think it's going to depend on the model. But it kind of looked like there's two little reflectors. I can't tell, though. It does look a little high, to be honest with you, but I don't know, maybe not. No front license plate? Don't appear so. It don't appear like there is one. Let me see. Now it's going to be hard to tell, obviously. Oh, you know what? This is the wrong one. Back to the other one. It's hard to tell from this angle. It don't appear like there's something there that's reflective. You know, what I hope we're going to see in trial or in court is that we'll see a vehicle coming in the same direction with a front license plate to see if if this camera can pick up those, like in the same type of conditions and the time of night, things of that nature, if it can pick that up. Sure does look like a really dark night, don't it? Like a night without stars or moons, or the moon not out. Oh, let's see. All right, so here's another clip of I'm not sure where this picture came from. Could it have been from way back over here? Maybe, possibly. I mean, that's possibly why I'd have it like this and cut out over here. That this is an image of the vehicle as it's approaching at this. I mean, I can't tell. I'll be 110% honest with you. I can't tell if there is one or not. It doesn't appear like there's one. I would like to see, like I said, I would like to see a vehicle with one that I know for a fact has one in the same condition, so that I can see if there's something that you can tell. And this might be why Ann Taylor says that she can't tell, right? Let's see. Yeah, Jeff, send me that, please. Send me that link. Send me the link. Send it to me on Facebook. I think the PCA specified one of the videos where there is no front license plate. There is one. It does specify that it does not have a front license plate, and then it also specifies that it's very similar, that it matches the description. There is another image that is out there that has been leaked. Let me see if I can get that. Let me see if that one came in as well. Now, this one we have looked into beforehand. But this is another image that has been leaked before. Let me pull it up real quick. Here it is. And this is the from 1112 King Road residence. Brooks says, I think you should show why the initial thought of the year was wrong. It's hard to see on those security cams. Yeah, I mean, it's 100% hard and 110% honest with you guys. I'm fairly positive these aren't the only pictures and videos that they had to tell. But we also have to remember, when did they have those pictures and videos to tell? And when did they have access? And when did they actually view them? Because those are all separate things, right? You know, some folks have this thought that, especially the Kohbergers, that when they walked in, when they being law enforcement into the 1122 King Road residence, that all the evidence was there on the table. All of the videos that they were going to need were stacked up neatly on the table with timestamps of every time that you need to see when the vehicle passes by. Didn't work that way, right? So they did the video canvas. They were doing a bunch of other canvases and other things at the same time early on. Remember this. They were interviewing people. They had a whole station at the University of Idaho where they were having law enforcement officers out there performing their thing, doing their stuff, their investigations. There was a lot of moving parts going on. They had so many tips coming in. We're having to check those out, those type of things. And so when is it that they got into possession of these cameras, and when did they view them, and when did they put them together, and when did they finally find, you know, when did they put it all together? It was going to take some time. I'm sure that, you know, even after they arrested him, they were probably still putting those pictures or those pieces together. You know, this is one of the reasons why I said that Bryan Kohberger made a mistake by waiving his speeding trial, because he gave the prosecution an opportunity to gather, find, and present a better argument for themselves, the state that is, against Bryan Kohberger, by able to find these pieces of evidence and stuff like that. And so early on, they thought it was a 2019 Sentra. Then they thought it was a 2011 or 13 Elantra. At the end of the day, who cares what it is that they thought it was? Can you say that this could be something other than a 2015 Elantra? Can the defense go up there and say, no, this is in fact a 2011 to 2013 Elantra because of this or because of that? Why argue what it is that they thought before the arrest even occurred, weeks into the investigation, when what matters is what they think and have now? It's just plain and simple. But yeah, it's going to be very difficult to determine, you know, year, make, model. You know, the first thing that came to my mind, you know, going through this, you know, just kind of remembering everything that happened in the manner that it did. I came out first and foremost saying, hey, you know, 2011 to 13 Elantra, it took them this long to come out with it. They don't know, you know, this, that, and a third. I figured, I was like, hey, everything that I have so far, it appears is going to be a bunch of side shots from ring cam footage, things like that, because ring cam footage, doorbell footage, all that are on houses. Those are facing the side of the street. They're not facing the street oncoming, right? And so you're not going to get a good front view of the vehicle or the back view of the vehicle. So everything's going to be a profile. That's going to make things a little bit more difficult to identify as well. And after this picture had came out, the one that we saw earlier at the gas station, that is when law enforcement started to go out of town and check other places. So that told me that up until that point, they didn't know he left Moscow, which means if he had left Moscow, they didn't know that he must have done it in a manner that wasn't videotaped. And sure and behold, that's what we end up finding out. But I was able to put these pieces together like years ago. And so make sure you like and subscribe so you get the right information. Not saying that I'm always correct. I'm not perfect by any means. But for the most part, I think I've gotten a majority of this stuff correct. Just, you know, I have a little bit of experience in law enforcement and stuff. But yeah, as far as when I saw that they thought it was a 2019 Sentra, and then they changed it to this, that, and the third, you know, those were the pieces that were falling into play. I was like, hey, all this means is it took a little bit of time to figure out and to gather all the pieces of evidence and to put them together. That's it. I mean, there's so many houses out there. This guy was out there between a significant amount of time. You know, you're limited on resources. You only have so many people that are employed with the Moscow Police Department. Yes, they had assistance with the FBI. Yes, they had assistance with Idaho Police Department or Idaho Police. But at the same time, I mean, there's only so many people, right? They had tens of thousands of tips and about maybe 70 people working on it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they still needed to go through it50 something terabytes of video, things of that nature. It's going to take some time. All right. So we have Midwest coming in with a 199 super sticker. Thank you so much, Midwest, and also becoming the newest YouTube member. We appreciate you. Allie Brooks with her membership for 5 months. Thank you, Miss Books. Appreciate you. Let's see. Now, this image here, I think, is going to also be able to tell you whether or not I hope this image here is going to be able to tell you whether or not there's a front license plate. Now, this is the King Queen Road intersection right here. And as you can see, the vehicle is directly right in front here. They have their license plates. You can see them reflecting back. But what they don't have are lights. Right, so there aren't headlights coming towards the camera at the same time. So I'm not sure how that would reflect if there was some headlights in the distance. As you can see right here, unless this vehicle doesn't have a rear license plate, it's not reflecting from here. All right, so it's got to be probably a lot closer than that. There's got to be some light going towards it, and to be able to tell. But this was at 1:56 in the morning. This was, I believe, right around the time, either right before or right after Maddie and Kaylee were dropped off after going to the grub truck, after being at the grub truck. Let's see. I'm gonna mark that for later to answer. So this is that there. Let me see. Okay. Now let me remove this because I'm not sure where I'm at on everything. And so we know that according to the defense, the clearest picture that they have is from this house here. Now, where it is on this house, I'm not sure. I couldn't find the camera itself. You know, when I went around looking for it. But this supposedly, I think this is the image or the address where the defense claims that has the best picture of Bryan Kohberger's vehicle that I guess it's the best description. But I couldn't tell you which angle they got it from, which direction that vehicle was traveling. So that was theirs. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about also was that, like, the Linda Lane footage. I know there's a lot of people that have been going through the audio of that footage to try to see if they hear that, and see if they hear cars leaving and such. And I think, you know, maybe you can hear some cars moving back and forth in the distance. The one problem that I have with a lot of it is the fact that, according to what this last trial was, that like Murphy, he was barking for quite a bit of time. It wasn't just a little bit. It was about 20 to 30 minutes before it stopped. And it wasn't as abruptly as Ann Taylor claims. It was, because the state also commented about it. So it's probably somewhere in between the both. But that the barking was for about 20 minutes or so. And I mean, you can increase that audio up as much as you like. I don't hear dogs barking like that, or a dog barking frequently during that time. But you guys let me know what you guys think about that. All right, let's see. All right, answer some questions. Do you think Bryan used more than one form of travel, more than one car, on foot, e-bike? Don't miss the K-Flexer article about BK's DNA test he told his neighbor about. I mean, I don't know. To be honest with you, he used more than one means of travel. I think that at the end of the day, it don't sound like it. It sounds like at least to that area that the person that they believe committed this crime was in that vehicle. There was, that car seen leaving at a high rate of speed right afterwards. The time frame in which it got there. There's other things that are indicators like the download of the victim's phones, the surviving victims' phones as well, and their statements that all indicate to a specific time frame throughout that night. So I doubt that he used other means. I mean, obviously he parked and walked to the house, but how far of a walk would that have been? Not sure. In fact, I mean, I got some pictures, some more pictures here. Let me see if I can pull them up real quick. Only thing about these pictures, they come in a little bit small, but we had one of our viewers come in and they had taken some pictures of the area before the house was knocked down. And so I just kind of want to show you guys a few of those real quick as well. And there was one other thing that going through here, just getting these ready to rock and roll for us. I remember is that when I was going through, because I kind of went through the differences between the 11 and the 15 Elantra. And what I noticed is that I think in 2015, because remember how it said sound, that there was something about the sound of the vehicle was the way they were able to determine the year of the vehicle. When 2015, they went from like a 1.8 to a 2.0 engine. The 2011 and 13 had like 130 some odd horsepower compared to the almost 200 horsepower 2015 Elantra model year. And so maybe that sound does make a difference there when you're trying to compare and contrast between, all right, in 2011 and 2013 having the 1.8 135 horsepower motor. Well, it's going to struggle, especially with some of the inclines and declines that are there. Let me show you this real quick. Let me pull this up. Okay, one sec. Shouldn't take too long. All right. Okay, so as you can see, the distance between the house and where he may have parked anywhere along here isn't that far. The house is pretty small, and this is what reminded me also about the sound of the vehicle. This is going around the apartment complex right next to the victim's residence. This is the as you pull up here, this is where the Linda Lane camera catches the image of the vehicle. This was where they would be going towards the Linda Lane camera. And as you can see, that's a significant increase there, a slope. I know that the slope on the other side is quite a bit. And so if you had a vehicle that was significantly underpowered by quite a bit of horsepower, by 50 to 60 horses, and I mean, well, let's just use percentages. I mean, if you're going from 130 to almost 200, I mean, that is over 50% horsepower increasing. And so, I mean, you're going to expect to hear a difference in sound there between those two type of vehicles. But as you can see, it's like super close. This house wasn't very big. That's one of the things that was, so here's the Linda Lane, where the camera is back up here. This house was very small. The area was very close to each other. This is the up here in the top left. You're going to see the house that has that camera that is coming out towards the King Queen intersection. And these aren't obviously in any particular order. But I just wanted to show you guys that this is a sloping area. I mean, even right here where they're parked at, you can see like I'm not even sure where they're parked at, but you can see the residents here. You can see a lot there. I mean, if somebody's not paying attention, a lot of people aren't going to be noticing things that are outside that are happening. It's just unfortunate. One thing I will say is that, when it comes to this vehicles, what can we determine that makes it look like this is the right vehicle? Well, one, you have your headlights. These headlights exaggerate over you see where the tires, the wheel well is for the tire. It goes well over onto past that area. So you can see where the wheel, the fender is rounded for the wheel well. The lights surpass that. The tail lights come far onto the back quarter panel, and you have this vertical, what is that? Maybe like 45-degree angle here on the back of the window there that are all consistent with the Elantra. And again, I mean, you're not going to be able to tell if somebody's in there. My wife's Steelers fan, she thought that at this last one you can kind of see somebody there, but she started trying to manipulate some of the images and stuff. And I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe. Crazy stuff, guys. But I believe this is the vehicle that was on that Fox. That was part of that. Well, let me show you guys that this is indeed this this photo here, that it is the real one. Let's see. That's right. Steiner Avenue and 95 is where you can see. I think that was because there's a let me see. Let me pull that up real quick. I believe that is right here. And I believe that is because there is a camera associated with this gas station over here, that A&W. So this A&W captures, I believe, this him driving through here. And that's where it captures the fact that he doesn't have a front license plate. You're absolutely right. I remember that now. Creepy stuff. %, Frenchie. At one point, somebody or something passed away on the property, land, anywhere where you're at, that you're standing on it in some history and time. Now, I get it. This is something a little bit sooner and closer. But at the same time, there's got to be some corroborating evidence here, right? Now, if there was more than one speck of blood on a handrail, all right, if they had maybe another speck of blood in the same room as the victims were in, you might have something. You might have something there to indicate that, all right, something else may have happened here. I mean, there's still that possibility, but it doesn't mean that Bryan Kohberger didn't commit this crime. It just means that at the very least, Bryan Kohberger could have had somebody help him. And I think that's what one of the things that the judge was trying to say was that, hey, this doesn't mean that he's been exonerated because his DNA is on the knife sheath. His DNA is there. His phone is off during the time of the murders. His vehicle during this time, there's a vehicle matching his driving around, being operated in an erratic manner. Now, you can't tell how many people are inside that vehicle. That's true. But it doesn't mean that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. That's far from it. I think if anything, you can try to say that maybe he had an accomplice, but at the same time, like, all right, well, when did this accomplice start to bleed? When did he get cut? When did this happen? Did it happen during the fight? Did it happen while they were during the commission of the crime? Because if so, where is that blood at that scene? Where is the blood underneath the fingernails of one of the victims, or on the wall near one of the, where, if he was struck, right, and he was struck in the mouth and blood came out of the mouth and it flung to the wall, and it dripped, and he touched it with his hand, and he touched the handrail later, right? Where's that flung part on the wall? Where's the rest of it? Like I said, I mean, it's on a handrail. We don't even know which handrail it's on. Could it be the first floor? We find out it's the handrail near the opening of the first floor, the door. Is that going to make a difference? I think it might. I think it might make a huge difference. Right? So, the way the prosecution said is like, hey, there was a lot of people that were there. They felt that the blood that was on the handrail wasn't as important, maybe not so much as important. I wish I could have the same term that she had used, but they felt that it was, and this is just kind of me paraphrasing here, that the blood that the DNA that they had on the knife sheet that they knew that the killer did in fact bring in was stronger than the blood, a little speck of blood on a handrail that anybody could have placed there. I mean, anybody could have done that. 150 people were there the night before. Like, somebody could have easily had a nosebleed somewhere else, and then it landed there, like on somebody's pant, and then they rub pants as they pass by, and then that pant or arm or whatever touches that part of the railing. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, why can't you say the same about the DNA that's on the knife sheath? Well, the difference is this is on a handrail. This is commonplace most people touch. It's not inside the button snap of a button, of the sheath, of the knife sheath, inside of the button snap. There's like way too many. Those are two different type of things that are going on there. And so, like I said, even if it was Bryan Kohberger's blood, and that was the only thing that was in that house, and there was 150 people there that was there the night before, and they found, or let's take that off the table. If they found Bryan Kohberger's DNA on a doorknob, on a handrail, on the and it was a small amount, right? Not like a not like a hand amount on the knob of of the bathroom sink, but like a small amount on one of these items that are commonly touched. That's going to be hard to explain. I mean, not hard to explain, rephrase this. It's going to be hard to prove and say that wasn't transferred there by somebody else, right? Especially if it's like mixed DNA or something like that. But single source DNA inside the buttons of a button snap, that's a little bit different. How is that getting in there? It'd be one thing if it was on the outside of the button, right? Maybe perhaps the killer grazed that handle, right? That was going up, and somebody touched that handle, that handrail that had come in contact with something that Bryan Kohberger touched. Okay, it's on the outside of the button, but this is on the inside of the button snap. Like, it just makes it so much more stronger because of the location of where it's at and the difficulty for it to have been transferred there secondarily. Everything else that they have, one, we can't determine, if that blood that's on the handrail came from that night or not. There was 150 people there the night before. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that was going to be kind of hard to determine. Even if it was like, for instance, let's go back with Bryan Kohberger. If it was Bryan Kohberger's DNA that's on that handrail, 150 people were there the night before. That's going to be hard to say, hey, it's him. Yes, you have some good corroborating evidence. You have the vehicles, video of the vehicle without the front license plate. You have his phone off during the time of the commission of the crime. I mean, there's so many things that point into his direction. I find it funny that people have a hard time figuring out who committed this crime, to be honest with you. Like, I find it like, it's I used to believe that there's no way people just can't figure this out. I mean, this is easier than 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, you don't need to have, one gummy in one hand and one gummy in the second hand, and then physically have to count the 2 gummies to figure it out. That 1 + 1 is 2. It's the same thing here. You don't physically have to have everything to figure out what happened here. Guy's phone was off during the murder, his DNA in the house, car outside, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, if his DNA was on something that was easily transferable to, especially given the amount of people that were there in that house, that wouldn't be as strong of evidence as the evidence that they have against him, even if it was blood. If there was just one speck of blood on a handrail inside of that house on a common area, I'd be having the same questions. I'm like, well, how did the blood get from the hand, get on the handrail, but not on anything else? Anything else? Was he struck with the handrail? Did he fall down and hit his nose on the handrail? And it just a small speck of blood came about that? I don't know. But is it reasonable doubt? I don't know. I mean, because you got to remember, reasonable doubt is different than all doubt, right? Now, is it reasonable that somebody else left a small amount of DNA on a handrail that committed this crime? Also, perpetrated this crime to frame Bryan Kohberger, because Bryan Kohberger is the real victim here, right? In pro burger eyes, it's Bryan Kohberger is the real victim. They framed him. The victims in this case were collateral damage, because what they were trying to do was they were trying to ruin Bryan Kohberger's life by taking the lives of these four students and blaming it on him, so that way he can't progress in life, right? And so they framed him from the get-go, because remember, Idaho State Lab is the one who found the DNA. They also collected the evidence. Evidence techs collected the evidence, not Payne or any of these other guys. Well, anyways, they took their lives to frame Bryan Kohberger, because he's the real victim here. The things that people think, it's just insane. Like, it is insane. Like, when you have to actually break down what has to happen for there to be a frame job, what has to happen for there to have been this, what has to happen for any of the, pick your favorite suspect, what has to happen for Jack DeCour to be the guy that had committed this crime. Well, one, he would have had to have some sort of connection to Bryan Kohberger and known who he was, planted the evidence. Everybody that's any state agency, every agency across the board, let's just say maybe they did enter Bryan Kohberger's DNA into the database after the fact, right? Every law enforcement agency that has access to CODIS was just like, all right, we'll turn a blind eye. It's insane, man. I don't know. I just find it funny that people think that way. Curious to see if they have video of him returning the next day, and if people saw him will testify. I'm sure there's going to be quite a few people that'll be testifying against him. Let's see. Could it have been from somebody who lived there before, party there before? I mean, 100%. Like, the reason why the knife sheath is so important is because that wasn't there the night before. That wasn't that was something that the killer brought in. Right? That's the only thing in that house that we know the killer brought in and touched, because the killer brought it in. Right? There's nothing else in that house that we can say that the killer touched for a fact. The only thing we know for a fact that killer touched was that knife sheath. Everything else, you can have, I don't know how much DNA on the bed, on this, on that. That could have been touched by so many people in so many different times. And I'm not talking about in a weird way when I say the bed or anything like that. Like people could, 150 people in a house is going to populate a lot of different places. People hugging, people, coming in contact with each other. That's going to spread stuff out. And as I said before, it wasn't cleaned out yet. You can still see the reminiscence of the party through the windows. They didn't have a party that night. They went to either Sig and Kai, the corner club, or somewhere else. There wasn't a party at that house that night. So everything that you can see through the windows was from the night before. So they hadn't cleaned it up like that. So there's going to be DNA everywhere. So what do we know that's going to be valuable in that house? It's going to be the stuff that wasn't there then. It's going to be whatever the perpetrator brings in. That's the important piece of evidence. Because if it was on something else that was there the night before, well, man, there's 150 people that were there that night. That came in contact with how many people, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What time does this picture say? It says at 3:45 a.m. So at 3:42, he leaves. And this is what we came up with before, right? So at 3:42, he leaves the area around here. He's passing by and he has left at 3:42, the King Queen Road area. 3:45, he's seen over here. So if he left when he did a direct shot down Steiner, turned onto the highway, turned behind the gas station, so that way, and I know I have this where it says the length of 1.66 miles, but if I should have removed that, but if that wasn't there, you would have been able to have seen this path continue around. Let me see. Let me just pull it up real quick. Where do I have it at? Here it is. So if he pulls up this way and goes all the way over here and right here behind and then comes back around, you only have to travel 32 miles an hour to get there, to be at that time. It's 32 miles an hour. You drive at 32 miles an hour, you can get there within 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. Let's see. If you guys have any questions, let me put some stars and stuff there. Let me see what you got. Evidence of other modes of transportation other than mode would be doable in this situation. Yeah, I don't think there was another method. Do you think DM and BF heard the dog barking? If they didn't, probably wasn't Murphy. I have no idea. I would assume they did, because the camera picked it up, but I couldn't tell you. I mean, shock and trauma can do a lot of things to a lot of different people, and animals too. You know, I know that Ann Taylor's like, you know, gee willikers, why isn't this dog all up in the blood and stuff? You know, why is it all clean in its room? Well, somebody went in there and took the lives of 4 people in a horrific manner. I mean, the dog was still a puppy. I mean, what do you expect it to do? Go out there and defend its, like, come on now. I mean, it was a golden doodle, I think, a little puppy at the time. It wasn't a grown pit bull or anything like that, or a German Shepherd that was trained to guard and protect. Expectations, man. I mean, there's these things where you can go watch them on YouTube, like, what, you know, people put like, they'll do certain things. They'll put a camera set up and somebody go into the house to see if their dog would have done something. You know what I mean? And the dog goes up, starts licking the intruder. Like, I'm not saying that that's what happened in this situation. Obviously, it was barking and it didn't leave the room. It wasn't covered in blood, so it was probably scared out of its mind. In fact, when I got bit by the dog, right, when my incident occurred and I was bleeding, my other dog saw it. They freaked out. They ran and hid in their crate. I had 2 of them hide in their crate for several hours, from what I understand. I didn't come home for a couple of days, so my wife told me this, but it wasn't until a little bit after midnight, she said, that when 2 of the dogs finally started to calm down from everything that had happened. And they were just in their crates. There was no doors closed, no nothing. They weren't locked up. They were scared of what had occurred. They were frightened about what happened and what they saw with me. Now, they didn't see, you know, I think maybe one of them may have actually seen my other dog bite me. But for the most part, they just they saw me coming out of the room with blood just pouring out of me, right? And that freaked them out. I'm sure they heard the noise too, but that's what freaked them out, and they ran away. So, I mean, I know people watch these crazy movies and think that their animals or themselves are going to do things. It's usually not. It's not the case at all. Let's see. Thank you, Rebecca Bruce, for your $10 super sticker. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Let me make sure there's nothing else I'm missing real quick. I'm not. Only one set of footprints heard running to and from the car. Yeah, but Ann Taylor's going to try to attack, even if they just heard something. Ann Taylor's going to try to attack it, saying, "Well, they were drunk or this and that." Right there. That's the attack that they have going on right now. Let's see. Put the picture up there for everybody to see. Just because there's other DNA doesn't mean make him innocent. One of the reasons that it is unknown DNA is there's no evidence of a second, third perp to even compare it to. And that's true too, right? They didn't say that there was two unknown DNA. There wasn't the same unknown DNA profiles, right? It were different ones too. Interesting. Handrail may have been a damp bathroom, difficult to trace DNA. And I believe what she said was like, hey, you had that blood, you had the DNA on the knife sheet that they knew that the murderer brought into the house. They wanted to expedite the process and focus in on the one that they believed was most likely the killer. Just because you have blood on the handrail, and let's just say they do the whole IgG thing, right, on that blood on that handrail, and they figure out it's John Smith. They go talk John Smith. John Smith has an alibi. Well, they just did a bunch of work that they don't need to do, right? They're going to want to remember, because there's something called resources. The FBI is one agency, right? And there's a bunch of other law enforcement agencies out there that are going to want to use their assistance when it comes to certain things. And so resources is key. You know, the reason why the policy is what it is when it says that they won't even do the IgG unless law enforcement has exhausted all of their traditional and other means of law enforcement techniques to capture the person, and they still don't know who it is or still don't have a lead or a clue. And the reason why they do that is because of resources. There's only one FBI, and if every agency in the nation was like calling saying, hey, we have this speck of DNA, you know, we want you to do an IgG on it to see who it is. And, you know, the FBI person asks the agent, asks the officer, all right, what have you guys done? Nothing. You know, we just got this DNA, so we want you to do all the work. Well, is there other ways you can figure out who this person is? Like, do your job, detective, go out there, figure it out. And if you have a suspect, well, you have DNA you can compare to. And if you end up coming up completely lost and you've exhausted every means and method, then come back to us and then we'll solve your case for you at that point. But you don't want to do it right in the beginning, because then everybody's going to try to get that taken care of at the same time, and then cases aren't going to be finished and yada yada yada, cold cases, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to go for the DNA that they felt was going to lead to the perpetrator, and DNA on a glove outside where they have no idea when that glove was left out there, if that was before, after, during, when, you know, the crime occurred. No idea. Blood on a handrail who, let's face it, we don't even know what floor that handrail was on. And could it have been in a bathroom, a handrail for the bathroom? I don't know. I saw that in the comment section. I mean, there's a lot of different, I don't know. But an item that they know that the murderer brought into the house had to have obviously touched it to bring it into the house. That tells you that, hey, most likely, if you found some DNA there, that's going to lead you right to the right suspect, which is what they did. I don't understand why it's such a big deal or why it's so controversial. It's really not. It's good police work. I know they checked his car for DNA. I hope they checked the key fob. Those can, yeah. I mean, I know they did, but I mean, if you were committing a crime like this, leave the key fob in the car, right? What are you afraid of? Somebody's going to steal your car while you're inside? That would suck, obviously. I mean, for you go in there, commit a crime like this, come out, somebody stole your car. Well, good riddance. But you're probably going to leave that there, right? You're not going to want to touch things. You're going to want to touch things as least as possible, right? And so what you're probably going to want to end up doing is leaving your vehicle unlocked, probably leaving the key fob inside of the car. Now I'm not sure if his is, you have to use the key for the ignition. If it's a push to start, leave the key in the car. Leave it in the ignition. I mean, you don't want to leave it on, obviously, but leave it in the ignition. That way, when you're in there, you just have to, push a button or do whatever you have to do. Just that way, you're not touching things as much as you, as least possible. That way, it's less cleaning. I mean, these are things that are for somebody with the experience, the knowledge, and the training that he has are 101. First things you're going to cross off. How do they catch a killer? Is well, this is how. Boom, 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 and you stay away from those things. Yeah, I believe he is too. Then everyone's screaming, no DNA in the car. Answer me this: where did Dad sit for 2,500 miles of no DNA? Well, I mean, I think what they're mainly saying is that there's no DNA of the victims in the car, and I'm not sure if there is no DNA of the victims in the car. There's no blood in the car, because if you go back and you listen to the way Ann Taylor speaks, she goes, and there was this one time in particular, she goes, there's no connection, there's no blood in the car, and she was going to say DNA, but she stopped herself. And she's mentioned it that there's no blood. There's no blood. There's no blood. I don't know. Maybe there's an item or something. At the end of the day, Ann Taylor and the defense team want the car thrown out, which would be also the fact that there's no blood in the car. Why would they want it thrown out? Now, she also did say that there was a spray of stuff all over the place to look for. Now, she didn't finish that sentence. Like, to look for what? To look for blood? That they found a spray all over the place to look for blood? Now, would that be interesting? Like, all right, you don't find blood per se, you don't find DNA, but you find luminol, amino acid, that black amino acid powder. You find all these things to bring up the presence of blood and or also cleaning supplies. Maybe you do find some cleaner, because she didn't say there wasn't no cleaner. She even said that there was a spray of some stuff in there. Remember that spray of stuff. So he had his car for 7 weeks. I mean, let's think about this logically. Come on, guys. Let's think about it real logically. For somebody to go into this house and take the lives of 4 people without leaving their DNA behind on the bodies would require quite a bit of planning and a lot of things going in that, in one's way for it to go. To have that outcome. Now, we know this is the outcome because, unfortunately, 4 people were murdered. So it's not like they're missing and they could have been killed. They could have just ran away. No, they were murdered. So we have 4 people who have lost their lives. And if you take the knife sheath out of it, the perpetrator did not leave DNA behind on the bodies, underneath the fingernails of a victim, nowhere there. So whoever did this went through a lot of planning to do so. All right. They would have had to. Now, do you think that planning stops at the murder? Or do you think that continues with trying to get away with it? Whether it be setting up your car to protect it so that way it doesn't get, you don't have to clean up as much, or you give an opportunity to leave DNA behind. A less opportunity to leave DNA behind, like dextering the car, so to speak, or maybe perhaps having a change of clothing and things like that. This wouldn't be the first case where somebody commits a horrific crime with a violent weapon and leaves without having DNA in their vehicle. Porco or Porks, I don't remember what his name is, out of, I think, Rochester, drove 3 hours, hit his mom and dad in the head with an axe, killed his dad, stood over him, blood everywhere. No sign of change, no sign of cleaning, no sign of showering, no sign of anything. Guy drove 3 hours back to his dorm. No DNA or blood in the car. He was a veterinarian tech that helped out, I guess, with like surgeries and stuff at the animal clinic. And, well, you have equipment there that protects you from getting blood on you and stuff like that. Well, Bryan Kohberger had forensic stuff. And also there was, he had forensics training in the cells and things of that nature, and would have understood how and why, and not to, leave your DNA behind at a crime scene, and not how to take a crime scene with you. And so let's think about this even more logically. If somebody were to go in there and in the manner of 11, 12 minutes commit 4 murders with a knife in close combat, not leave their DNA behind, or what's more likely, that somebody leave their DNA behind during that time frame when they're in close proximity to somebody while taking their lives with a knife? Or do you think they'd be more likely that you're going to find DNA 7 weeks afterwards, when this guy who has all this training in forensics and stuff like that can clean his car? Because if you don't have the DNA there, why are you so surprised you're not finding it after 7 weeks when he's had an opportunity to clean his vehicle? It's just shocking how somebody can have both of those mindsets that, like, oh yeah, this person didn't commit the crime or whatever because there's no blood and this and the third, and yet somebody did. Somebody killed them. They didn't leave any DNA behind, and yet they were able to get away with that. Even if somebody says, "Well, the 8 hours that Dylan and Bethany had, 8 hours to clean a house versus 7 weeks to clean a car." Come on now, guys. Either way, it doesn't make any sense. Logic isn't there. Let's get those like buttons. Let's get those subscribe buttons going up there as well. Could there have been 3 people involved? I mean, I doubt it. I strongly doubt. Could there have been 3 other people involved without somebody to dime anybody out? Then you also have Bryan Kohberger, right? Like, where did these 2 other people come from, right? Because he hadn't really been there for a very long time. How do they trust him so fast to go and commit a crime like this and not dime him out or anybody else out, or him not, or Kohberger not dime anyone else out? You know what I'm saying? Like, he can save his own rear here if he were to say something to the effect like, "Hey, I was just there. I didn't know this was going to go down. X and X, so-and-so did this, blah, blah, blah." Yeah, you know what? You're probably not going to get the death penalty if you can end up proving something like that. Like, "Oh no, man, I met Bob Joe," or whatever his name is, and look, here's our conversations that we had. He had a crazy obsession, or whatever the case may have been, right? But the fact is, there is no blood or DNA underneath the victims, or DNA or any of those things under the nails of the victims, or there's blood in the handrail. I don't know how much blood, but there's blood on the handrail. My thing was always like, it's hard for one person to go in there and commit the perfect murder and not leave their DNA behind. How reasonable is it to believe that 3 people can go in there and do the same thing, right? Probably unlikely. But there was DNA left behind, so. But it's just a speck. Where's the rest of it? If somebody got hurt, where's the rest of it? If it was a cut, if it was a bloody nose, there would be more than just a speck. Where's the rest of it? Where did it start bleeding from? Where's the connection? And even if that was like somebody else, well, then maybe perhaps there's still someone else out there that may have been involved, but that doesn't mean that Bryan Kohberger wasn't. Which is what I think Judge Hippler was trying to say as well. Is that doesn't mean that it's exculpatory by any means. It just means that maybe Bryan Kohberger had a friend. Michelle asks, wasn't the glove out by the street? I know it was outside. I couldn't tell you where. I know that the interview room guy, McDonough, he found a glove. I'm not sure if it's the same glove or not. I know some people have speculated that it wasn't. Some have said that it was. And that was closer to the street, but it was within the perimeter of the caution tape. Not like the DNA was on a library book on the coffee table. Yeah. Let's get those likes up. 700 people. This is the image. This is one of them. And for a fact, this is the correct area. Now, whether you guys think that the person operating this vehicle is Bryan Kohberger or not, this is the person who committed this crime. That's for sure. And it's pretty eerie to see. You know what I mean? And in just a few minutes, 20, that this person in this vehicle is going to go to that house and commit just such horrible acts. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Julie, coming in with your $9.99 super sticker. Appreciate you. Amazon receipt. Well, they got some. There's a lot of stuff that's there that they want thrown out, right? Amazon receipts, phone searches, AT&T searches, Amazon searches, so much stuff. I mean, they want the car thrown out, which is a question mark. Remember, why throw it out if your biggest piece of evidence is that there's no DNA in it? Because if you throw out the car, you can't go in there and say that there was no DNA from the victims inside that vehicle. Like, let's just say they get their wish, right? And the judge says, all right, we're going to throw out the search of the car. Okay, everything else stays for whatever reason, right? Now you go to trial and you can't use the search of the car, what was found inside it or anything else like that, right? Now, all these cameras, I mean, that belong to other people, so they can submit all this all they want. That has nothing to do with the description of the car. And so now the only thing is that maybe perhaps the jury may not know that Bryan Kohberger owned a 2015 Hyundai Elantra. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to bring that up, but if they do, because I'm sure they're going to try to figure out how it is that he got there. If you can't say that the victim's DNA wasn't in the car, I mean, don't you think that's a win for the defense for them to say, hey, there's no DNA in the car? Don't you think by not allowing them to say that gives the jury the thought that, well, did they find DNA in the car? You know what I mean? I don't know. Not reasonable. Not in my opinion either. Let's see. The people that can't figure this out and see that he did this either don't live in reality or just live in a state of denial. Some people just like to be trolls. What's the motive? Well, what do we know, right? So we know that there's audio that can pick up dog whispers. My bad. Can pick up dog barking. It can pick up whimpers. Can pick up voices and whispers and a thud. Doesn't pick up the sounds of somebody losing their mind because they're out on roids and somebody pissed them off. It doesn't sound. You don't pick up the sounds of somebody screaming, "How could you do this to me?" or "I hate you," or any of those other things that would align with rage, right? You don't hear much. It sounds very methodical. Sounds like somebody going in and out very quickly. The person, if this is indeed Bryan Kohberger, he didn't go back but one time, to the residence, which is something that I don't want to say you would not expect, because at the end of the day, this is his field. So he would know and understand that a big red flag would be traveling and going back to the scene of the crime. And so going back before the scene has been discovered is one thing, but after the scene being discovered, never going back again one that kind of changes his habits, doesn't it? I mean, if he was going to Moscow so often, 12 times or whatever the case, and they're saying that had nothing to do with the victims, right? That he just went and stuff like that, and now he's not. I wonder what else changed, after the murders that he was doing beforehand. But anyways, so the motive, I mean, is probably very simple, like, same thing that drove like BTK or any of these other serial killers. At the end of the day, there's just some people that you can't reason with. We do know that Bryan Kohberger did speak about things, his mental health in the past, about how he had a problem with feelings and, thought that everybody was a sack of meat. He even said that he was an a-hole to his dad. He spoke about how he should treat him better, but everybody is, lack of remorse, lack of feelings. Well, I mean, not to say that everybody that has a lack of feelings or lack of remorse, that's either a sociopath or a psychopath, is going to turn into a quadruple homicide murderer or serial killer. But those that are serial killers, typically that's one of the traits that they have, isn't it? So there's another thing there. If he did have those lack of feelings of remorse and this, that, and a third, and then we go back to his Reddit forum, right, where he was reaching out to ex-cons who had gone through some of these violent crimes, and he was trying to understand what their feelings were. Well, if he related to them on some sort of weird, disturbing level and started to think to himself like, hey, I have these feelings, I have these thoughts, I have this, I have that, because at the end of the day, he was struggling with some certain things. That could have been another thing that let him off as well. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that he could have done this. Trying to figure it out, why somebody unreasonable would do something by trying to use reason is probably crazy on its own as well. Let's see. Yeah, where's his stuff? Where's the clothes that he brought from Walmart? Where's the knife and the sheet that he brought from Amazon? Someone steal the outfit. Exactly. And his car while he was driving it by himself at night, as he admitted. What was Ted Bundy's motive? Exactly. Amazon purchase sheath is only speculation. Well, I mean, it's only speculation for those that don't know, right? I mean, just because you don't know doesn't mean that it's true or not true, right? I mean, you don't know, so it could be speculation for yourself, but that doesn't mean that it's not real. Like so many other things, right? Like, because like the Linda Lane footage, when that came out, people were like, oh my God, no, you can't tell that's an Elantra. You can't tell it's this. You can't tell it's that. And I'm like, that's not the only footage that's out there. And they're like, well, we haven't seen it all. That's speculation. I'm like, no, and the PCA says that there's a bunch of other footage, but there's a bunch of other things that are going to happen, that have happened, that we're going to find out, that just because we don't know about doesn't mean that they didn't occur. And I think I've brought a pretty good idea of what a lot of those things are. Kind of like when I said that the Ann Taylor, like when I broke down what her defense's strategy was going to be, that's going on now, like a year ago, it's not that hard to figure out, right? It's not hard to figure out things when you have a little bit of experience in the field. I guess that kind of helps out a lot. And just kind of an awareness of what's going on. I called out that, hey, they were going to claim that this was a lie, that Payne lying to the grand jury. I said this like 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I brought this up, and so many other things. And so, just because they haven't flat out come out and said that the Amazon knife sheath purchase has happened, doesn't mean that hasn't happened. In fact, there are some folks that know for a fact that has happened. I may be one of them. Let's see. I'll answer your questions probably for another 5 minutes or so, guys. That car has no tires. I hope that's that. I'm sure it's a joke. Innocent until proven guilty. Good, because after the trial, he's going to reap the justice. Right, right. And innocent until proven guilty doesn't mean that he's innocent, right? It just means that we treat him as if he's innocent until proven guilty, right? That don't mean that he didn't commit the crime, right? You know, I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, it's innocent until proven guilty." So Brent Kopacka committed the crime until he goes to trial and somebody says that it wasn't him. And I'm like, well, who the hell said Brent Kopacka committed it? Where was his conviction at, right? It's like, it's okay to convict everybody else, but Bryan Kohberger and point the finger and everyone else. But once you point, you look in that direction, it's innocent until proven guilty. So we have to say everybody else is guilty. It's bull crap. I hate that approach. Let's see. I swear, I remember there was a news live happening in front of the house the next day, and you can see a white car coming down the hill in the back. Anyone remember that? I do. I do. But there's so many white cars. I mean, white, I think it's white, gray, and black are the three top colors for automakers in the past, I don't know how many years. If you go out there and you look out there, see how many white, black, and gray cars you'll see. It's tremendous. Tremendous amount. Why make excuses for not testing others' DNA? You should want to know the truth. Well, Detective Maury, it's not so much that we're making the excuses for not testing others' DNA, but as I mentioned before, there's a thing called resources. And they did test the DNA. They checked it into CODIS. It didn't come back for anybody. Now, to go into the extensive work and stuff like that, you want to have a little bit of, you gotta want to have to narrow in your focus there. And time is of the essence, because at the end of the day, this person killed 4 people. He's out there on the loose. Who's to say he's not going to do it again? Who's to say he hasn't done it already? Who's to say he hadn't done it between the time that they caught him? Right. So there's so many things that are going on. You know, time is of the essence. You're going to want to try to get your perp as fast as possible. And once you get your guy and you're locked in, I mean, and who's to say also they haven't tested it? All they said was that at the time that they went to the grand jury and at the time that they wrote up the magistrate's work order, that this was unknown. It was unknown at the time that they went to the magistrate. When did they go to the magistrate? 7 weeks after the murder happened? When they got the arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger? So they were trying to make sure that they got the right person, and they wanted to make sure that they were going to be able to get the right person quickly, by going with the information that was going to lead them to the right person the fastest. Are you going to go after some DNA evidence on a piece of, on a handrail that is in a house that had 150 people in there the night before? And this is a common thing that a lot of people touch. It's one of the most common things. Are you going to try to go find the DNA in the button snap of the button of something that you know the killer brought in and touched? I mean, at the very least, if it's not the killer's, let's just say it came back to Bryan Kohberger's and he had an alibi. Let's say his phone wasn't off, was on, and he was taking pictures, and he didn't drive a white Elantra, he drove a red, I don't know, Cavalier or something. All right, well, did you ever come in contact with a knife? Yeah, you know, I sold that to this person here. Then you go look at that person's shoe. That guy has a white Elantra. That guy's phone was off during the night of the murder. Hey, now you can do that, right? But when they got Bryan Kohberger's name and they started going in there to say, all right, well, we're going to, you know, knock you off the list, so to speak. Clearly you, clear him as well. They couldn't do it. Couldn't be done. Phone off, out and about, whole 9 yards, right? Vehicle matched. Boom, bada beam, bada boom, you got your guy. So that's why you don't have to go through everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, what you're going to do, you're going to try to clear, you know, everybody that lives in Moscow and that, you know, in Washington state, you know, might as well 48 to 50 states, 48 states that are contained there. Also Canada. Let's make sure we get all those guys and clear everybody else before we know for a fact, before we go back after Kohberger. Let's DNA test everybody and let this thing go on for years. Come on now, man. Gotta be smarter than that. Reasonable doubt does not exist here. BK is on trial, not anyone else. His DNA is on the sheath. If there was someone else involved, that person can be tried at a later time. Yeah. Yeah. Who contested? Because it wasn't Othram that found it, right? Right. Othram didn't find anything. It was the FBI, and they had to go through MyHeritage and a bunch of other things to figure it out, right? So who's to say that they didn't do that? But now they don't want to go through all those backdoor things because, hey, Ann Taylor don't want them to. So at the end of the day, can they test it? Obviously they can. Who's to say they hadn't? Who's to say they hadn't? The argument is only at the time that they signed the warrant, because Ann Taylor's argument is at the time that they signed the warrant, that had the judge known that there was unidentifiable male DNA in the house, maybe they wouldn't have signed the warrant then. Well, is it still unidentifiable? I don't know. I know that the prosecution said that they've done DNA work at the request of the defense. And that's the only thing that we've known that they've requested or have brought up. We've talked about that quite a bit. Go back and check out the videos. It was one of the end videos. I'm sure if you're a Pro Burger and you're watching one of the Pro Burger channels, they turned off the channel or they turned off the tube before Ashley Jennings went out there and explained that they have done other DNA testing since his arrest. But at the time of his arrest, yeah, they hadn't checked it yet. Let's see. And I don't know if there was or was not enough blood evidence to test it or not. I mean, if it was that small, that tells you some other things as well. But I know some other people are bringing that up, that maybe perhaps it wasn't large enough to test. That's possible. But at the end of the day, it's like, all right, are we going to test this, or are we going to test something that we know that the killer brought in? I mean, it's common sense to me. Now, you can always go back and test it afterwards, but that was not the argument. The argument isn't that today it's unknown. It's that would the judge had signed the arrest warrant knowing that there was other unidentifiable DNA in there. And what the judge said was like, it doesn't matter because his DNA is on there. At the very least, it's not exculpatory. This is exactly what Judge Hippler said. It's not exculpatory. At the very least, it just means that he had maybe a friend that helped him. And you just saw Ann Taylor looking at him like that with her head like, oh, I don't know what to say now. Kind of like the time when she said, remember when they were trying to throw out the death penalty? And she's like, all right. And the judge was like, all right, well, what are you going to, you don't want to do the firing squad. What is your remedy? How would you want to take his life? Because that's part of the rule book, right? That's part of the rules. If you're going to say, and you're going to go in here and say, hey, this is unconstitutional, it's not right, we can't take his life, it's inhumane, it's this, that, and the third, you have to come up with an alternative means of execution. And she couldn't. She was like, same thing. And I'm not saying she's like a bad attorney or anything. She's doing everything she can to save this dude's life. At the end of the day, I think there's been more defense attorneys and more attorneys coming out saying that this is looking all more like he's about to plead guilty and hope that he doesn't get the death penalty as part of that plea, based on the mitigation experts that they have and what they're trying to, based on the strategy that they're going with, which is very simple. Remember, like I said, you can look at somebody's strategy and determine where they're going. That's exactly what I did when I was looking at how, Ann Taylor kept bringing up dates, times, when they found things out. I said it then. I was like, look, there's nothing in here that says IgG. That is how they found him. Ann Taylor knows they found him by the IgG. She's not stupid. She's acting like it by saying, we don't know how they found him. We don't know how they found him. I said this then. She's just saying that, and she's throwing it out there. She's a good storyteller. Because what she's going to try to say is that PCA doesn't mention the IgG, and that's how they found him. And they went in there and they alluded to finding Bryan Kohberger by other means, but not by the IgG, which is how they found him, which means that they're lying, they're blah, 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 throw it out, yada, 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 right? And so I saw that tactic coming years ago. People are barely catching on now. Remember, like I said, 2 + 2 is always going to be 4. Some people need to write it out. Some people need to count their fingers. Other people, it's a very simple question to answer. Same thing with this case. For me, it's a very simple thing to see. Other people, they need to be explained. Some people need to have everything written out in front of them. There ain't nothing wrong with that. This isn't a simple question, like a 2 + 2 question, like I made it seem. It is a little bit more complex than that. But at the end of the day, I think that once you start trying to connect the dots, it's pretty simple as far as who committed this crime. But, the legal part of it and stuff like that is obviously more complex. But I digress. Where did it come from that there was a party there the night before with 150 people? Well, there was a lot of pictures, a lot of people talking about it, a lot of people from that area that talked about it. There was so Jack DeCour's house, they had, and I think the house between Jack DeCour's house and the victim's house, they had some sort of ceremony and a bunch of other things that were going on in that area. But yeah, about 150 people in and out, not just in that house. And it's not just that they had 150 people at that one time. It was like a bunch of people throughout that period that was coming in and out. There was, I'll see if I can get some of the pictures up, but they took a lot of pictures inside that house underneath that good vibe sign. There was black dresses and a bunch of other things of that nature. That was all for like that area, just kind of like Sigma Chi did their little thing the next night over. Well, I think that was kind of like what they were having in that area, that Greek Row area. Plus, it was just, it was homecoming weekend, the last homecoming game or last home game for the Vandals that weekend. And so, yeah, there was a big old party there the night before. And I've also confirmed this with some folks that I've talked to. The other video from the news broadcast the next morning where they see the white car coming down the hill behind the house. I had it. I'm sure I can find it. They were under the influence. Yep. Yeah, everybody in that house seemed to be under the influence of alcohol or, they're having a good time. There were a bunch of college kids on a weekend on a Saturday night having a good time, doing absolutely nothing wrong. How did the DNA double in size after the FBI got their hands on it? That's my only major question. I believe people have answered this in the Discord quite a bit. I guess when it didn't double in size. I think the file doubled in size. And so I'm not a DNA expert, or I think you would actually need to speak more with like a computer expert because of that. But it was like the file doubled in size. It had nothing to do with anything else. But DNA does get repeated, right? It gets replicated. I'm sorry. So that way they can test it over and over again and a bunch of other stuff. So that's really not anything that's too concerning. But I guess from the outside, it's like this, right? Like if I were to tell you, hey man, I bet you I can make, 5 tons of steel fly. Most people will probably tell me I'm crazy until they saw like one of these big ass bombers flying over, with these military airplanes that are freaking huge. So, yeah, I couldn't tell you, but I'm sure there's a pretty reasonable explanation for it. Let's see. Left my dogs in a crate, and then once a guy came in to do maintenance, unbeknownst to me, he later told me he had been there and told my dogs didn't make a peep. Yeah, man. Sometimes you'll get some dogs that obviously are territorial and will, do their thing, but a puppy, not so much. Not always. If so, still means that there are killers out there, even if that means that there are other. That's if you believe that blood came from somebody else who's involved. The likelihood that you have blood in one part of the house where nothing happened, and no blood where something did happen, and that those two things have some sort of connection. I don't know. It depends. I don't even know which handrail it was on. Like I said, it could be on the one right by the front door. It could have been from anybody. They were drunk and shocked and probably heard the dog barking. So this may have contributed as to why they didn't hear anything or understand what was going on for sure. As far as the surviving victims, I mean, there's so many things that could have been going through their mind or happening. The trauma behind losing 4 of your roommates or 4 of your friends in the same house that you're in, and especially if one of you guys, and who's to say that Bethany didn't, but one or both of you guys saw the person that killed these, the people that were in your home, killed your friends. I mean, it's pretty traumatic. I mean, I think there's some people that are out there that don't understand how trauma works with other people, right? Like, and I bring this up quite a bit, and I don't might try to compare it, but we have quite a few people in here, and I don't know if any of these folks have heard this, but like, I would say SA is pretty traumatic. It's a different trauma than losing 4 people in the same house that you're in, but I would say that they're both are pretty freaking traumatic, right? And these people that are blaming Dylan and Bethany, I wonder if they would also be the same persons that would blame a victim of SA for not calling police right away if they don't call right away, or calling friends and family first, or calling at all, because those things happen. Not just SA, like victims of a lot of things don't call police, whether it's their life being, like we had somebody that actually called in on the line one time when we were doing phone calls. She had an intruder go into her home, and she hid in her closet with her phone in her hand and then called 911. She was found, assaulted, beaten, and then afterwards she called her family members or her boyfriend, one of the two. And then later, after the fact, called police. Like, trauma affects people differently. I mean, go watch some of these videos where people scream and like, just because somebody's pretending to be a bush and they jump out and hop. We have all these big people that think, oh yeah, man, if somebody ever jumped up at me with a knife or did this or that, I'd be all Mr. Tough Guy. I would fight back. I would do this. Man, there's somebody pretending to be a bush and jumps out and people are screaming and freaking running. Get out of here. I can't stand people sometimes, especially those that like blame victims, family members, or victims, surviving victims, for something after they've gone through something traumatic. It just speaks to how heartless and cold that those people are. And obviously they'll probably be the ones that be crying the largest or the most if something happened to them. It's like those folks that hate police, oh man, I hate the cops. Cops suck, this, that, and the third. And then as soon as somebody yells at them, I'm calling 911 so they can solve my problems. And then they go out there and the cops are like, hey, they was yell at you, and then we can do, they don't ever do anything. Then they get mad when you don't do enough, or you do too much, or whatever the case may have been. Or when you did just enough, but it was at their direction because they did something wrong, right? They stole something, they broke something, they did this, they shouldn't have done. And there's so many other things that are going wrong all day. I see all these people, breaking in and doing that. You don't catch them, but you catch me. You catch me. Get out of here. That's why people, I don't like a lot of people. We'll leave it at that. Let's see. Yeah. 100%. And like I said, who knows how much blood, where was, how long it's been there. I mean, there's so much that can go along with that. Let's see. Like driving his own car, but he did. And he took his phone with him. He drove his own car. He took his phone with him. He turned off his phone, right? Imagine if he didn't imagine if he didn't take his phone with him that night. Had he left his phone at his house and just left it there on, then he wouldn't even have had to have said that he was out and about by himself that night. He left the sheath behind. There's a lot of things that he did dumb, Detective Maury, or fake Detective Maury. What I'm surprised about is why you think that somebody that did so many dumb things, how you're surprised he got caught. Like, come on now. Somebody do a bunch of dumb shit, you're going to get caught, right? You take your own car. You take your phone. You leave part of the murder weapon behind. You do all your searches online and you purchase the weapons through Amazon and all this other shit. And you're surprised he got caught. Because you personally know him? Are you one of these persons that think he's going to walk out of the courtroom and into your bedroom and tell you all these sweet nothings? Because he's not. He's not. This guy committed a crime, not because he's a genius, but because he's an idiot and he's a psychopath and he's crazy. Not because he's a genius. There are far more smarter individuals who've gotten caught than Bryan Kohberger. He's just a dumbass that thinks that he was smarter than everybody else and made a bunch of dumb mistakes along the way that got him caught. I mean, would you expect anything less from a heroin addict that is a loser that has lost every job that he's ever had, who can't hold a girlfriend, who has had almost every girl that he's come encounter with, at this point, either at WSU or DeSales or Northampton University or the high school he was at, when he was following and stalking some other women there too. Remember when he got kicked out of the law enforcement classroom? Oh yeah, all that speaks real Einstein, real genius, real man of genius, right? Where's that Bud Light commercial? Fucking Bryan Kohberger, real man of genius. Stupid is what it is. You guys remember the military guy that was killed by SWAT the morning of the murders in the apartment, pretty close to Bryan's apartment? Yep, that was Bryan Kohberger, who, let's just say, if the cops were trying to frame somebody, why not frame him? It's always going to be an open case. You can't close it because he's gone. He's dead. People say that that law enforcement did shit shady there too, right? They said that they erased his phone history, right? Without thinking that, man, if this guy was buying, narcotics or doing things, maybe he deleted everything on his phone so nobody else got in trouble for the things that he was doing. But no. There's always a conspiracy, right? And so he, the cops killed him in a bad manner way. I mean, he shot at officers. He did all these things, but yet, because the cops took his life, they did it wrong. Yet, you would think that if they did something wrong there, that would be an easy way to say, hey, we also suspect him of being the person that committed the crimes at 1122 King Road residence of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. This person killed them. He's dead. Can't close it. It's going to be completely open for the rest. Nobody can get anything. Nobody will be able to find anything. There won't be any FOIA reports because it's always going to be an open case. That's how you get away with doing something like that. Not blaming some dude who's a freaking PhD student at the neighboring college. Come on now. How do they even know who the freak Bryan Kohberger is? How does Moscow Police Department know who he is? And I know some of you are going to tell me, because he applied there. No, he didn't. He applied at the Pullman Police Department to be an intern. I know one person done told me that after he had applied for Moscow Police Department, that him and Payne were drinking buddies and they were drinking outside of some campfire. And that's how they got Bryan Kohberger's DNA to plant. I am not lying. That literally came to me by one of these pro burgers. Like that is the stuff of, I'm on some pretty good stuff because of my injury. I think I need some of that stuff. So I feel real good. But yeah, I remember who Bryan Kohberger is. It's kind of like the Karen Reed case too, right? Where people are saying, oh yeah, you're going to go blame Karen Reed for murder when you're trying to get away with a homicide that you committed yourself. And you're looking at declarated detectives, right? Officers and experienced persons who put a body out there in the front of their own yard to make it look like it was hit by a vehicle. And instead of just saying that it was hit by some random vehicle, so that way it stays an open case forever and nobody ever closes it, nobody ever gets blamed, nobody ever goes to jail, they actually fingerprint or finger point at somebody to say, no, it was that person. So that way there can be all this huge, person's looking into it, because at the end of the day, a cop was killed. And so, yeah, all that makes a whole ton of sense. Let's see. They were not requested until the 23rd. I don't know what you're referring to. Yeah, I would assume so. And fake detective Maury says that the spray stuff was the stuff that the crime lab sprayed. Oh, so the crime lab's going to go in there and say, we found stuff we sprayed. It's like putting in, we entered Bryan Kohberger's car with a set of gloves, and so when we left his car, we're gonna write down that we took the gloves out of the car too, right? Or a flashlight. You know, the officer went in there with his police issued flashlight, and then came out with his police issued flashlight. So he had to document that both those things entered and exited. Get out of here. And I don't mean like get out of the show or anything. I just meant like that type of stuff. It's just funny. All right, let me see if I got any stars. Put some stars if you want me to answer your questions. I'm going to go through here as fast as I possibly can. I've always thought that Dylan suffered an episode of depersonalization caused by the trauma. Symptoms include feeling like one is in a dream, distortion of time, world appears foggy, etc. It sounds like what she's going through. I'm not a doctor, so I couldn't, identify or any of those type of things. I can only just speak on the fact that I have, in my law enforcement career, spoken with a lot of people who have dealt with all sorts of trauma, whether it was from somebody losing the life of a loved one in a very horrific manner. I have, whether they be murder or suicide or a lot of other different things that didn't end up in like loss of life, just severe injury to persons or persons' loved ones, things of that nature. And I can tell you for a fact that people act differently than what most people think that they would act. One perp for one intended victim turned into 4 victims because Kaylee was in Maddie's room and Xana was awake and heard something. That could be true. I mean, it sounds like, if I had to take a guess, that's plausible. Most plausible. Yeah, I want to know if it's. Oh yeah, I don't know if it was Chris McDonough's glove, the one that he found, or not. Good job. AR Hayes says blood found means nothing. It was not tested, so it obviously was not found an important part of the crime scene. I don't know where it was found. To me, it was found on a handrail, small amount of blood. Like I mentioned, they probably looked at it like, hey, we got to catch this guy as fast as possible. Are we going to go look at the DNA, the small amount of DNA that was left on an item that we know that the murderer brought in? Or we're going to look at the small of DNA left on an item that was stationary here, but touched by so many people? I think when you look at it from that logic and reasoning, you're going to go with the one that you know for a fact that the murderer brought into the house. And then you go forward from there. That doesn't mean that you don't ever check it. And it doesn't mean that they haven't checked it. It just means at the time that that law enforcement went for the arrest warrant of Bryan Kohberger, it was unidentified. There's no way there were 3 people, all that blood, and they didn't step in it. Good point. Who leaked these? I don't know. It wouldn't leak to me. So just kind of recap what we talked about. I got this from Jeff H. He had this on his YouTube community post, and he tagged Gray Hughes on there as being the person who had received these in a live that he had done, I think yesterday or the day before. Same cars at the gas station. Yep. If Xana fought, why is there no DNA? That's the thing. I don't really think Xana fought back in the manner that a lot of people think they did. I think that there was some defensive wounds, but defensive wounds doesn't mean that they fought back necessarily. Defensive wounds can be as simple as somebody putting their arm up and in a defensive manner, and there be cuts on their arms or hands from doing so. The sounds or the audio, if are described correctly, right? Because I mean, again, this is the PCA, doesn't have to describe everything. It's not everything that happened. It's only going to be the highlights of it. But if it is accurate as far as the sounds that are coming or that are being picked up from the camera that is 50 feet away, it doesn't sound like you hear the sounds of somebody kicking, screaming, yelling, fighting back, any of those type of things. I agree. I don't know where he got it from. I would think if these pics had anything to do with the crime, probably not a good idea to have a live show them. I mean, they're already out there. And this isn't the residence house. This isn't the King Queen Road residence. And this isn't part of anything that was spoken about in the PCA or that we know of. So I don't think that this so what I'm looking for, incriminating towards Bryan Kohberger one way or another, to be honest with you, because it doesn't show. I mean, from this image alone, you can't tell anything outside of it's a white vehicle with headlights that go, to a certain extent over the wheel, and taillights that do the same. And it has about 45-degree angle there at the back end of the passenger door towards the trunk area. Looks like it has a shorter trunk. So it's, there's certain things you can see from this, but it's not something that somebody can say, oh yeah, that's Bryan Kohberger, or no, that is not Bryan Kohberger. Which, like with what Xana says here, is like, how do you know this is BK's car or not? I can't tell you that this is or not, but what I can say is based on the information that's in the PCA, and this does appear to be the car that the suspected killer would be driving. Whether that's Bryan Kohberger or not, I couldn't tell you from this image. Based on the evidence that is out there that we do know, I would say that it is Bryan Kohberger's car. The picture is from EY. Let me see. It's from right here. Yeah, we did a comparison. There's that house right there. And then in the back, you can see the staircase right here, and these cars are the same as that staircase back there. See the cars. You can see the door, the window. Same window, doors, staircase. So yeah, it's definitely this one. And your camera is right there. Right smack on that wall. Picked up that vehicle traveling this direction back towards the victim's house. I'm glad you said this, detective, because I said this before, and I've said this many times. This is the most funniest thing like ever. People trying to figure out if a vehicle has tinted windows on a black and white footage at night. That is freaking hilarious. Or not even black and white. I mean, how can you tell if this thing, let me pull it up real quick. It's not black and white, but let's see. How can you tell if this has tint or not? You've got to be kidding me if you think that this has tint or not. That's funny, dude. No offense, but that's funny. Like, you can't tell if that vehicle has tint or not. Even in the traffic stops, there's one of them with Bryan Kohberger, the one that's in the evening. You can't tell. And you know why? Because glass is reflective. And what do you think it reflects of at night? The dark. So like that traffic stop where Bryan Kohberger is like arguing or whatever, it kind of looks like his vehicle has tint. It doesn't. It's just because it's getting dark and the windows glass is reflecting off the dark trees and stuff that are around it. You can kind of see. And so, yeah, there is absolutely, I mean, you can Even if the window was, I mean, the window would have to be down and the light would have to be flashing in towards the vehicle for you to be able to see inside of it like that. To think that this vehicle has tint because you can't see inside it because it's dark is hilarious. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Look, these cars all have tint, right? Let's see. Oh, look at that. Maybe it was that car. I bet you a lot of people are gonna be like, "Oh, look, there it is. There's the car that was driving there at night because it has that degree 4-door Hyundai." Mm-hmm. Now they all have tint. I don't know if they're the same car or not. No, actually, that does look like that Hyundai. You can see yeah, that looks like that Hyundai that we saw right now. This one, hold on, let me pull it back up real quick. That one right there, that white one. We just cleared that guy. It's right there. So as you can see, even that guy just got cleared. Even this guy just got cleared and Bryan Kohberger can't. Man, that's sad. All righty, guys. Well, that's going to do it for me. Let me make sure I didn't drop any. Here it is. I think I almost did. Canadian True Crime Buff, what's up? Coming in with 5 Drunk Turkey Show memberships. Thank you so much. I got to do a members only this week. It's been too long. I've been blaming the injury. I'm feeling better, so I'll be doing it this week for sure. All right. And that looks like that's going to be it, guys. I don't see anything else in here. Have any of these pro burgers realized that there's a strong possibility that Dylan lives a sheltered life and didn't know what to do in a panic situation? Oh, I don't mind taking any. I don't mind talking to pro burgers or anybody, as long as they're respectful. You know, and I don't try to be disrespectful. I apologize if I am, but as long as they're not name calling anybody. But I do get tired of saying the same thing over and over again. As Rosa says, this is true. All righty, guys. Well, I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate everybody that was, almost forgot this one. Lovely 13 with a 1999 super sticker. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now I'm double checking everything else, making sure. Well, guys, you guys have a great night. It was amazing. I'll be back in a couple of days. Is Pro Burger considered name calling? No, I don't think so. Because when I came up with the name Pro Burger, because I'm the one that came up with it, I got tired of saying Pro Kohberger. So all I was saying was those that are in favor of Kohberger is a Pro Burger. That's it. I don't think there's anything negative about that at all. Now, I will say that I have maybe extended the term a little bit to include those that, because there are some folks who have come up to me and said, well, I just don't know. You know, I'm not saying that he's innocent. I'm not saying he's guilty. I want to wait. And by all means, there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I don't think that you're a pro burger. A pro burger, in my opinion, is somebody that no matter what, it was not Bryan Kohberger. That it could be the chief of police. It was a group of, what was that one person said? It was like this whole gay, lesbian, transsexual story that came out. Remember, Justin, I think was the name. All that happened. There was Dot, so many other things, right? That the chief could have been involved, that FBI and all these other people, but Bryan Kohberger alone, like no way in hell. They know him. They're friends with him. They've known BK. He would never have done this. Those type of folks that are that delusional, I've started to call them pro burgers. So I mean, I guess maybe you can kind of say, I guess it is, but they call me a guilter. that doesn't bother me because I think he's guilty. Because it's true. I guess if it bothers somebody being called a pro burger, if they're pro Kohberger, I don't understand why they would bother them. But it is what it is. You guys have yourself a great night. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.